Hello, you're watching Foreign Correspondents. I'm Min Sunny with our panel of foreign journalists. Welcome to the show.
Great to be back again, thanks.
We haven't seen you for a while, Eva. Let's start with you. What are some of the stories that you've been covering so far?
Well, I think we all had our eyes on the death of Otto Warmbier. It was a shock for everybody, and I think now we will have to try and, if ever, figure out what actually happened, because so far nobody really knows, and also it will be interesting to see what will be the reaction to that event. That might change something, that might not. We'll have to see.
Right, of course. Elise, what about you?
Well, in the United States, 2 lawmakers have already filed a proposal to ban travel to North Korea by Americans. The number of Americans who go to North Korea each year is very small, somewhere between 800 to 1,000. But already there are sort of moves to try and limit that, even because of the danger and what happened to Mr. Warmbier.
Frank?
Also covered the same story of Mr. Warmbier's death and its potential impact on inter-Korean relations, on U.S.-South Korea and U.S.-North Korea relations, of course. Also looked into the THAAD. Again, that's something that I cover quite closely, and that continues to be an issue here, especially leading up to the summit between Moon Jae-in and Donald Trump.
Right, which is what we're going to be talking about on this show. The leaders of Korea and the United States are scheduled to hold talks later this week amid tensions here on the Korean Peninsula. In this edition of Foreign Correspondents, we take a look at the upcoming talks and the importance of bilateral relations. President Moon Jae-in is scheduled to make his first overseas trip since taking office. From June 29th to the 30th, he will hold summit talks with U.S. President Donald Trump. Some of the issues that are expected to top the agenda are strengthening the ROK-U.S. alliance, tackling North Korea's nuclear issue, ensuring peace on the Korean Peninsula, and working towards stronger economic and global cooperation, among others.
한미 간 긴밀하고 굳건한 공조가 그 어느 때보다 기묘한 시기에 이루어진다는 점에서 큰 의미를 가지고 있습니다.
President Moon was sworn into office back in May. Shortly after his election victory, the White House extended its congratulations.
The President looks forward to meeting with him and talking about our shared interests. So I'll wait for that conversation, and I'm sure we'll have a readout for it.
The two leaders later held a telephone conversation during which President Trump invited President Moon to the U.S. The Korean leader responded by promising to send a special envoy at the earliest date possible. Within a week since taking office, Korea's Special Envoy Hong Seok-hyun met with President Trump on May 17th, delivering a personal letter from President Moon. President Trump was said to have expressed his positive sentiment toward President Moon as he was receiving the message.
동맹 이슈, 사드 문제, 또 문 대통령 6월 방미 문제 이런 것에 관해서 폭넓게 아주 좋은 의견을 서로 교환했습니다.
Despite this, it is hard to predict whether this amiable atmosphere will live on through the US-Korea summit as well. North Korea has been relentless with its missile provocations, and the US anti-missile system THAAD also remains a contentious issue. Especially of concern is the death of Otto Warmbier, an American college student who was detained in North Korea for 17 months and died only days after returning home.
문 대통령은 원비어 군의 사망 소식에 안타까움을 표하고 북한이 인류의 보편적 규범과 가치인 인권을 존중하지 않는 것은 대단히 개탄스럽다라고 말했습니다.
The Korea-U.S. summit comes at a time when the need for stronger cooperation between Seoul and Washington is greater than ever. All eyes will be on what results come out of the meeting. Among the many issues to be discussed, Eva, what do you think will be a major issue for discussion between these two leaders?
Well, I think we can't avoid talking about North Korea, especially after the death of Otto Warmbier. So I think they will have to talk about that. I would say that there are many issues that have to be dealt with. Now the question is, how far can the two leaders deal with them on a first meeting? Because all of those issues, THAAD, North Korea, and even economic bilateral relations, they are controversial. And I'm not sure whether Moon and Trump should, on the first meeting, already tackle such controversial issues. So I'm wondering actually which one they will choose and how far they will go into their discussions.
What about you, Elise, as an American journalist?
Yeah, well, the American leaders, the Trump administration has already said North Korea is the top priority. It's going to dominate this summit. But we should point out that neither side is really ready or staffed up for a summit. Moon Jae-in just took office a month ago. The Trump administration has notoriously failed to staff up its East Asian policy leaders at the State Department level. There is no ambassador to Korea from the United States still. There's a lot of factors here that indicate these two are having a summit rather early. I think that we're going to be looking at appearances more than substance. Can they get off a good handshake photo op, really, because that has actually been, an issue of global news, these handshakes.
I agree with these guys. I think it'll be very difficult for them to tackle any of the outstanding issues in any depth. They're too new into their positions. And also, when we look at the North Korea issue, it's really somewhat intractable. There needs to be a real new approach if you're going to solve the issue of North Korea. So getting to that in this first summit, when the two leaders have really just taken office, and as Elise pointed out, haven't staffed up their regional policy people, is somewhat unlikely. I think what we'll be looking for is more of an atmospheric summit, similar to what you had with Xi and Trump earlier, where they're trying to lay the groundwork perhaps for future policy coordination.
Here in Korea also, there's a lot of talk about the timing of this summit. Some have claimed that it's happening too soon, that they're not really ready for the talks. You share these views?
Well, I would argue that that's true for the American side. I think that the Korean side will actually get staffed up very quickly, and Moon Jae-in has experience in government. He's done this before. And so of the two sides, I actually would argue that the Korean side is probably going to be better prepared than the Trump administration. The Trump administration's fundamental problem is that the administration, so the State Department, the Defense Department, their policy tack is often wildly different than what comes out of the president's mouth, which is also supposed to be a policy from the same supposedly coherent administration, because you have a policy of extra sanctions and pressure, which is the official policy line of the Trump administration. But then you have Trump himself saying he would be, quote, honored to sit down with Kim Jong-un. Those two things are on opposite ends of the general policy debate about North Korea. And so where the American administration is a huge question.
I do think that Moon Jae-in has made efforts to sort of close the gap and show how he supports some of Donald Trump's policy toward North Korea and the sanctions and pressure. He has combined that, though, with olive branches toward North Korea, like approving NGOs providing aid to North Korea and contacts with North Koreans. He didn't mention that side of things in recent interviews that he's done, specifically the CBS interview that was quite prominent in the international community. He showed how he wants to sort of close the gap in his policy with Donald Trump toward North Korea. I think the actual summit coming early before they've developed a coherent policy toward North Korea is actually a benefit. It will prevent the two from having a genuine or perhaps quite harsh clash on policy. If they have developed, their own sort of tracks of policy that they wanted to pursue toward North Korea prior to a summit, they might have, more problems.
We talked about this at the start of the program, but earlier last week, Otto Warmbier, the American student who was released by North Korea, dies after returning home. Do you see this incident as affecting the upcoming talks, Eva?
Well, what I see is that in that context, Moon Jae-in won't be able to promote dialogue with North Korea as much as he might have wanted to. I think Donald Trump will have this event in mind and might even use that event to justify the hard line. And so I think this might change in that sense. In that
because
direction.
President Trump has described it as a brutality of the reclusive regime, right? And speaking of President Trump, he's also facing much backlash over the Russia scandal, Elise. Do you see this as affecting the talks, these domestic issues?
It affects everything because this Russia investigation is ongoing. It's not just one investigation, it's several. It sucks up all the air in the room when it comes to news coverage, when it comes to what's going on Capitol Hill, but also, and most importantly, it sucks up the attention of the president. From all of the published reports, the president is obsessed with this Russia investigation, or the Russia investigations, plural, and how to get them off of his back, instead of just accepting that they're happening and letting them go on a parallel track. This is somebody who has been trying to shut them down and actively trying to reach out to other leaders in government to try and shut them down. And so what happens is that normally this Otto Warmbier news, were it in a different context, were it in the Obama administration, Clinton, Bush administrations, it would be a week of headline, front page, top story kind of news. But instead, because so much is happening, the velocity of news out of Washington is so great, each day, each hour, each news cycle, it just disappeared. And so, and that is the biggest effect of what's going on with Russia. And not only their the investigation regarding the Trump campaign, but also the bigger issue of Russia, which is that they were meddling in the United States Democratic presidential campaign. And that's huge. That's a huge deal.
I agree with Elise. I think that one of the things that happens because of that Russia investigation, like we saw with the Park Geun-hye scandal, it weakens that leader in terms of their negotiating with other countries. It weakens their position on the international stage.
Following talks in December 1952 between then U.S. President-elect Dwight Eisenhower and Korean President Lee Seung-man, the two countries have had some 60 summit meetings. Eva, do you believe this latest meeting will serve to advance the alliance between the two countries?
South Korea didn't have a leadership for now almost a year, and so we have to catch up with that. The bilateral relationship needs to be strengthened again, and so I think this will take time. So I think we shouldn't expect too much from that meeting. The important thing will be to lay the foundation of a good relationship, and with Donald Trump, we know that personal relationship, personal feelings, should I say, matter a lot. So we know that he played golf with Shinzo Abe, for example, in Florida. I think those details will matter, and I don't think we should expect concrete details, concrete things to be decided on important topics yet.
I see. So like Frank said, we'll just see and we'll watch and see how they lay the groundwork.
Well, I think we need to hope that nothing bad happens, really. I've seen some of Moon Jae-in's handshakes, and he doesn't really go for the really hard, testosterone-laden handshake. He does, nice, friendly handshakes, and I think we should look for something like that. And along the rest of the meeting, just hope that there aren't any serious bumps in the road, and they can get into and out of it without a major incident. And I think that would be a success probably for both leaders.
In this next report, we take a look at Korea's alliance with the United States that initially began with a focus on security to eventually cover a broad spectrum of life, including culture. THAAD, North Korea's nuclear program, sanctions and defense costs. These are just some of the main issues expected to be discussed during President Moon's summit meeting with President Trump. The one underlying theme that ties all this together is national security. Security is the very basis of the Korea-U.S. alliance.
한반도의 평화 정착을 위해서라면 제가 할 수 있는 모든 일을 다하겠습니다. 한미동맹은 더욱 강화하겠습니다.
The alliance dates all the way back to the Mutual Defense Treaty signed by the two countries in 1953. The treaty states the parties will consult together whenever, in the opinion of either of them, the political independence or the security of either one of the parties is threatened by external armed attack. It also states the Republic of Korea grants and the United States of America accepts the right to dispose United States land, air and sea forces in and about the territory of the Republic of Korea as determined by mutual agreement. With the implementation of the treaty, the Korea-U.S. joint defense system came to be the bedrock of Korea's national defense. It also led to the establishment of U.S. forces in Korea and a combined military command. The alliance not only helped enhance Korea's defense capabilities, but also gave it room to focus on economic development. In his recent visit to the Combined Forces Command in Seoul, President Moon Jae-in noted the Korea-U.S. alliance has been the framework for democracy and economic growth in the country.
한미연합 방위태세를 국군이 유지하는 가운데 한국군의 북핵 미사일 방어 3축 체계를 조기에 구축할 수 있기 위해 노력해야 하겠습니다.
In the face of continued nuclear and missile tests from North Korea, looking for ways to further strengthen the joint military alliance will also likely be an important agenda on the table.
양 정상 간 개인적 신뢰와 유대 관계를 강화함은 물론 확고한 대북 공조를 포함하여 양국 간 포괄적 협력의 기반을 굳건히 하는 전기가 마련될 것으로 기대합니다.
The Korea-U.S. alliance has been in place for over 60 years now, and it's seen as having played a key role in maintaining peace on the Korean Peninsula. We sit down now to take a closer look at the alliance and what it means for both countries. By definition, an alliance refers to a union or an association for mutual benefit. Elise, what about for America? What has it gained from the alliance with Korea?
Well, this is like the linchpin, as they say, as the American leaders constantly say. The alliance between U.S. and Korea is the linchpin to America's alliance with East Asia in general. I mean, both U.S. forces in Korea and U.S. forces in Japan comprise 50%, nearly 50% of all the deployed troops of the U.S. military abroad. But also the economic exchanges have been strong, especially after Korea-U.S, which is the bilateral trade agreement between the two countries.
Recently, Moon Jae-in, he's the presidential special advisor for unification, diplomacy and security. He came under fire for remarks regarding the alliance between the two countries. He said that if the alliance were to break because of a possible fallout from THAAD, then alliance is not what the two countries had. What are your thoughts, Elise?
Well, these were controversial remarks that this advisor Moon went and made when he was in Washington. He has already, we should point out that he has already sort of said that they were just his personal opinion. They are not the opinion of the President Moon administration. But I think the most notable part of what he said was that not only is the alliance not that important to South Korea, but also that the U.S. should curtail the joint military exercises that happen here on the peninsula twice annually because North Korea sees them as such a threat. And so to already sort of give up a concession ahead of a summit like that was probably a mistake when it comes to the optics of it.
I think the timing was bad, that's true, and I think this is material too that might upset the US, but I don't think he went too far either in the sense that it was conditional. And he said, if North Korea gives up the nuclear development. So there was a condition, and he also did not say we should, but I think, if I remember correctly, he said we might consider, suggest to the US. So I think the quote is being sort of simplified, and it has been a huge issue. I think the South Korean government probably was not prepared for that, and in the end, I think it is not that different from what Moon Jae-in has been campaigning and has been always saying. It's just the political game, it's true, we would not expect that kind of statement at that moment.
I agree with you guys. I'm acquainted with Professor Moon Jae-in. I've been to his forum many times. I think at this conference, the media is going to just take little clips out of that. And I think what they left out is that the conditions that he would want to place on some type of drawdown of these exercises would be a freeze on North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. That's what he was pointing at. And I think that's a laudable goal, to trade off something in order to get North Korea to walk back on those. And it's not far away from what Moon Jae-in has said that he wants to do here in South Korea. He wants to, for South Korea to regain operational control of troops. He wants South Korea to have a more independent military posture here. And you know, again, so Moon Jae-in's comments don't really go as far away from Moon Jae-in as one might think.
But it shouldn't have come at that moment, and maybe from him, but maybe after the first summit meeting and from a president, maybe not from an advisor at a seminar.
In a more broader light, Frank, do you believe Korea's alliance with the United States is affected by Korea's neighbors in the region, including, let's say, China, Japan, Russia?
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, the position of South Korea surrounded by these major powers affects its motivation to maintain such a strong alliance with the United States, such a strong military alliance with the United States. And I think we also have to recognize the economic link between the U.S. and South Korea. Previously, the United States had been South Korea's largest trading partner. The change in that reflects other changes that are taking place in the region. It's some years ago now that China became South Korea's largest trading partner. And I think that symbolizes sort of the transition that's taking place here, a transition that the U.S. and South Korea and China and Japan are going to have to adjust to.
Right. What shape do you foresee this alliance taking on under the two new leaders? I mean, what might be the priorities of the Trump administration? What might be the priorities of the Moon administration in the next couple of years?
We talked earlier about distractions and how many distractions this particular administration has, and the lack of staff, competent staff at the State Department. They're still having trouble recruiting because of all the distractions of this administration. So I think because of that, you can look, at least for the next 3 to 6 months, at more status quo. I think there's a lot of investment among the people in the sort of mid-level at the State Department, the political officers in the embassies, to just keep things kind of as is, as they have been, and keep things running smoothly, because outside of another major provocation by North Korea, which I won't rule out, the Trump administration is just so distracted with so many other problems. Not to say that those problems are more important, because arguably they're not, but they are certainly distracted.
I agree with Elise here, but I think that those distractions and the U.S. sort of discord within its own house can serve Moon Jae-in in his desire to take control over inter-Korean relations. He wants to open up Gaesong, he wants to open up Gyeonggang, he wants to get engagement rolling on the Korean Peninsula. If there isn't some type of provocation out of North Korea, the Moon Jae-in administration will have a tremendous opportunity to pursue its engagement policy toward North Korea, simply because the U.S. president and administration is going to be tied up with other work. Do you think they're going to get to chorus? I really don't think they're going to be able to get to the trade agreement at all. And in terms of THAAD, having this year-long assessment kind of spreads out the opposition and dissipates that as an immediate concern. So again, you know, this atmosphere and discord in the U.S. can give the Moon Jae-in maybe some type of opportunity toward North Korea.
That's one scenario, and then it can also go in the very other direction. So I think that's why the first meeting will be that important, and the trust building between the two leaders will be important.
So whether the first meeting will focus more on security or on simple bilateral ties on the economy, that's to be seen. Right, well, that brings us to the end of the program. Before we go, Eva, what were your thoughts on today's discussion?
Well, I think it will be very interesting to see those two new leaders meeting and interacting. I think they are very different. They seem to have very different personalities. And so I'm looking forward to that meeting and to following it closely.
And see what kind of handshake they'll have, perhaps.
Yes.
Right. Political pundits believe the talks will offer the two countries a sketch of ties for the future, and many here hope that portrait would include an image of productive growth. Thank you for watching.